Afternoon, colleagues and our witnesses. Thank you for coming back for our meeting this afternoon. We are now on meeting number 91 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. I recognize that we meet on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Pursuant to the House Order of Reference adopted June 21st, 2023, and pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, October 26th, the committee is meeting to proceed with clause by clause of Bill C-53, an act respecting the recognition of certain Métis governments in Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. And we left off this morning on Clause 8. Just as a reminder, we have a great audience joining us today. Now that we're in session, there's no photography, and no recording while we're in session, and that applies for members and, of course, officials. If you want to capture the moment, you'll have to do it afterwards. So we're on Clause 8, and where we had left off was me asking if the member for CPC 3.2 wanted to move the amendment. We'd had a discussion on General Clause 8. I had nobody else in the speaking list, and so now we'll move to the CPC 3.2.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
I think we want to carry the conversation on Clause 8 because we've been working on that all day still.
Yeah.
Gary still.
Gary
Sorry.
still had the floor, I thought.
On the...
When we adjourn, right?
Yeah.
And so it starts over.
Yes.
We adjourned. We didn't carry. I don't carry the list forward for if we had been suspended. We would carry it, but the motion was to adjourn, and so we now start on Clause 8.
Clause 8, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I want to talk about is Clause 8.
Clause 8.
Okay. Well, like I say, I had exhausted, but okay, resume on Clause 8.
Me?
Yeah,
Yep, there we go. It came. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just want to update the committee that we've been working at this most of yesterday and all day today to try to get to a compromise on Clause 8 that we think would meet the needs of all of those that have an interest here. And we've been working with some of the partners that are here in the room. I've been working with Ms. Idlut, which I hope she's going to make it. And we've actually gone back and forth with the, I don't want to butcher anybody's titles, but the Legislative Council, I believe, that drafts. Is that the right title? Sorry. And they've sent us a couple drafts, which I have not sent to the clerk yet because we've been looking for the one that would actually be accepted, we think, by everybody. And we actually did have another option sent to us by one of the partners here literally just before or in the middle of question period today. And so we've sent that one off to the Legislative Council as well to see if we can find a compromise that meets the needs of everybody to bring clarity to. I mean, the issue we've been talking about is the clarity that we heard so many concerns over the course of the 8 weeks of people that felt they were maybe being drawn into something that wasn't by their choice. And so we're just trying to make sure that they are respected, but at the same time that the Métis governments that we're trying to give recognition to in this legislation are respected and honored in the context of what they are trying to accomplish. And that's why we've had the conversations with them as draft, as part of the drafting of all these things. So as far as a way to proceed, unfortunately, I've hit a wall in the context of just not having the amendment that I think might be the compromise. I know Ms. Idlut and her team is looking at it. Our team is looking at it, and we've sent it off to the Legislative Council to do the drafting of the proposed amendment. And so I'm trying to figure the way forward. And in all fairness to everybody, we've gone back and forth this all day. It's not like we have not tried to. We started with an option this morning. We've had a couple other ones that have gone back and forth throughout the day. And in the compromise is one that was developed at literally after 2 o'clock this afternoon. So it's not like we haven't been trying to find this spot, which we talked about this morning, saying by 3:30 today we hoped we could get there. So I'm honestly trying to find the path forward here that solves that. I don't have the proposed amendment in my hand from the Legislative Council that I can offer to the table at this point. So I guess I would defer to some other comments on this and just see what our way forward is based on being at that point in our journey. So maybe some other people want to speak to that, but that's just an update of the work we've tried to do today to get to a compromise and get to a place that we believe satisfies the needs and the concerns of all of those that we've heard from over the last several weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Vidal. I will say that one of the things that was talked about, I'd raised it yesterday, is procedurally, we have two options if we want to stay on Clause 8. One is through unanimous consent, and that would drop it to the end of the review, but above Clause 2. And so that is one procedural solution. There's also the option of moving a motion to stay on Clause 8, having a vote on it, and then doing that. So,
Can I respond to that?
yeah, and
Or
then
my
we'll go
next
to
one?
my speaking list.
Yep.
Yeah, please.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I honestly do. And sorry, when you offered that yesterday, that was exactly where my head, I said, that makes sense to me. But I in the conversations with the experts later, how they explained us not being able to go back to that. And I get on Clause 8, we can't move on to any of these other amendments on Clause 8. And my concern is that this recognition, sorry, I can't even say that word, the recognition section is so central to the whole piece of legislation that without understanding where we land on this, I know it's, for me, it's going to personally be difficult to consider some of the other amendments because this piece of this part of the legislation, this recognition section, is central to so much else. And so then when we consider some of the amendments later on the derogation clauses or if we've solved some of these things on this piece, it just kind of the cart and the horse seem to get out of order on this. And I'm struggling with how we make our way through some of those other things without resolving this very, very central issue first. So that would be my response. I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate it when you offered it yesterday. I thought that was a very good answer. But when I understood how this is going to impact these other things, I'm now a little bit more hesitant just based on kind of the work we've done over the last kind of 48 hours on this. So I'll just leave it there, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. I will point out there are 15 clauses with no amendment that have been put forward that, so there are ones as well if it's the amendments that are the concern. But next on my list I have Mr. Viersen.
Mr. Chair, to the same point, I suppose, from Mr. Vidal, that we had confirmed yesterday that this is kind of the crux of the whole matter, and I would say that our distraction that we had this morning hasn't led to the ability to necessarily get the amendment done that we were hoping for. It took us off of that for a time, and so here we are. Once again, the issue around Indigenous governing body and what that all entails is where we're at on this particular amendment, and I hope that that we can get Ms. Islout here sooner rather than later, so that we can have this discussion with her, because I noticed that the next amendments are from her as well, and so it's going to be a challenge to move forward on this until we have her in the room here. So I hope that we can deal with that soon. So thanks.
I have been informed that Ms. Idlut is on her way, and but I have a list we'll continue working through. Next, I have Mr. Zimmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to put a motion on notice, so I know this isn't the right time. I just wanted to put myself in the queue for when that was appropriate. Thank you.
Well, thanks,
That's
Mr. Zimmer.
really the first available opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If we can move off of Clause 8, there'll be a perfect opportunity. Next on the list, I have Mr. Schmale.
Thank you, Chair. I to your last comment, I agree with Gary here. The issue is if we move off Clause 8 without a final landing point, some clauses later on get a little tricky and might not go as smoothly. So we've, as Gary pointed out, and I'll give credit to Gary and Arnold. Arnold threw his line of questioning about the definitions, and then Gary, through his work with C29, came into the fact that it's kind of missing that definition, and the definition and the recognition is really the key to a lot of this, including when you talk about membership, and that's something Arnold brought up very early on, was about that membership. And when we think back to the conversations we had with the First Nations that were here, and even the settlements, a lot of that conversation was around the membership and so if if in this conversation we can arrive at something, and I think, as Gary pointed out, he did have an amendment he was working on that I hope will be acceptable to the committee. I think he is trying to get that translated from last I hear. He's nodding, so yes, that is correct. Once that gets translated, I think we can have potentially a winning formula here, but it is also kind of I guess challenging on our side, right? Like the government has, thousands of people in the department that can help them, and we're working with our limited staff and our resources that we have at our disposal, trying to address the concerns that we heard in testimony while respecting the spirit of what this piece of legislation is supposed to do and will hopefully do, and try to strike that balance. But as Gary alluded to, we are doing this on the limited resources we have, but also drawing on the expertise and the knowledge that our partners do have, that we are able to take from them and hopefully replicate in this bill in the form of an amendment to Clause 8, or rewording, however you want to put it, that it does address the concerns. Because I think, I would hope that it wasn't the government's intention to divide Indigenous communities the way they have. First Nations versus Métis, Métis versus other Métis. Like it's unfortunately not the coming together as I think many had hoped, and that's unfortunate. I trust the government came forward with good intentions. Unfortunately, the process, I think, was not followed through in the way they probably should have. I think the fact that through testimony we were able to uncover some of the concerns that were out there could have been done had proper consultation been done in the first place. Now, having said that, I do recognize that it is a piece of legislation that involves the governing bodies, if you will, of three organizations to basically continue on to solidify the jobs that they are already doing, which is an amazing job, and gives them that recognition that they rightfully deserve. And as we go through this process, hopefully we'll come to an agreement here that is able to address a lot of those concerns. And so we have the membership, which I think we're going to address. We have the definitions. We had that long discussion not too long ago about collective, community, individual, what makes up this, what makes up that, how does that play together, and now we are dealing with the next issue, which is the Indigenous governing body, which in this piece of legislation isn't defined. However, in C-29 and others, it actually is. So if we are able to actually define it, but also define the actual membership part, I think we can hopefully, in addition to 8.1, which is, I believe, the non-derogation clause, hopefully put, or at least ease concerns that the Métis settlements had, for example, or even some of the First Nations had. And we are able to do this just based on the limited resources we have. But because we are able to kind of all work together across party lines, I think we may have achieved something pretty remarkable here. And in terms of amending this piece of legislation to the point where it actually improves it, to the point where we'd be able to come together, because I think had this passed in its current form with that wording the way it was, I think the possibility for court action later on down the road would have been, I would say, quite high based on the feedback we've gotten from other Indigenous leaders. And that is something we're trying to avoid. The fact that Indigenous leaders continually have to take the government to court, it doesn't matter what stripe, is I think the fundamental issue we're trying to fix, right? And a lot of the concerns are about consultation. So if we don't get the consultation right, if we don't get the legislation right, then we're spending more money than is necessary, not actually caring or looking after the people who these governing bodies are responsible for, or elected, or however it's structured to be responsible for. It potentially falls through and causes bigger problems down the road. And again, I keep going back to the fact that Parliament, the committee, did not define what free, prior, informed consent was at the time, which is something we as the opposition brought forward as a potential issue we should address as legislators, rather than the courts potentially doing it in the future. May have served us well right now to have that roadmap. So I think as we get to this, we will hopefully have that amendment ready to go very soon. And that way we can have a discussion on that, and hopefully a vote on this, and hopefully then, as you said, Chair, move on from clause number 8 and move through this. So I don't know if Ms. Idlout is ready to speak or not. She might have a few concerns she might want to raise, but I will cede the floor and potentially come back based on what Ms. Idlout has to say.
I do have a list. And,
okay.
So next on my list is Mr. Batiste.
Thank you for those comments, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the guests for being here today on this important day as we navigate this legislation. You know, Métis in these areas of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario have been waiting for recognition from the federal government for generations. We've gotten very close. We're at the end of this legislation, where we've gotten 12 amendments done, a lot of it with collaborative support, and we haven't moved past this in the last 3 meetings. And I understand the difficulty for the Conservatives to grasp this, and I say the Conservatives because we're talking about Indigenous governance. We're talking about Indigenous ways of knowing, Indigenous knowledge. We're talking about things that, as a government, we've sat down with Métis and said, we're going to co-develop this with you. And a lot of it is a colonial government trying to understand Indigenous ways of knowing. It's like trying to put a square peg in where a square where a circle peg is. It always doesn't mesh. It doesn't always mesh. And the whole area of Indigenous constitutional law, whether we're talking about communal versus collective rights, where we're talking about Indigenous governments, these are very complicated things. But I ask the committee, let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good. This committee has been one of the most collaborative committees I've been a part of. We've done some amazing work together, passing all kinds of amazing legislation. And over the past 3 meetings, some reason that has stopped. Some reason we're unable to find ways to move forward. Our government has put forward many different ways in which we can do this, and our chair has suggested many ways in which we can do this together, in hopes of, giving probably the best Christmas gift we can move forward on is to get this to the House or to the Senate and to vote on it, so that we can get this legislation done, so that generations of Métis don't have to wait any longer. We've got less than a dozen amendments left, and their government is supporting many of those amendments. We're very close. Now, the chair has offered some solutions on moving past this amendment so that we can make progress on all of the things that we agree on. And we do agree on a lot of things. And so I'm asking, when we're looking at this, there's a lot of complicated things out there. That's why this legislation is co-developed. That's why this legislation, and it's the first step of this journey, saying that we recognize that Métis have the right to self-determination. We recognize that we don't have all of the answers on membership, ratification, election process, but that's for them to decide. That's what UNDRIP, which we've passed, and we've talked about, we didn't define UNDRIP. My father, who's one of the co-developers of UNDRIP, when they were looking at this key United Nations document, couldn't come to a consensus on what is an Indigenous people, who are Indigenous people. But they said, you know what, that's okay. It's for the Indigenous people, for them to decide. And they passed it in the United Nations. And we've passed it as law in Canada. So I'm asking this committee, we've hit a stumbling block for the last 3 meetings. We have plenty of the stakeholders here today waiting for what almost seems like a Christmas miracle at this point, for us to get through the one clause and get to the next things that we agree on. So the chair has said, let's move forward on the things that we do agree on and come back to this at the end. I think that's a perfectly acceptable way of moving forward. And I really, really stress, we've had a great collaboration at this committee. Let's not change that. Let's make sure that we get this done. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. Let's get it to the Senate. There's several Indigenous senators who I'm sure have a lot to say about this. But let's get it to that point, and let's make some progress on this today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Batiste. Mr. Viersen is next.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just around Mr. Baptiste's comments a little bit. Getting this right is very important. That's been the challenge the whole way through around the relationship between Indigenous people and Canada. Has always been about what do the words mean? Why? What do the treaties mean? What does our relationship look like? All of these kinds of things. Now, the ways of knowing, he talks about that the reality is that we are dealing with the Constitution Act of 1982. That's right in this section of the bill that affirmed by Section 35 rights, Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982, and that's where does that, how does that fit into this? Who is a Métis government? It's the act, or the Constitution Act talks about Métis peoples again, and it talks about treaty rights now existing by way of land claim agreements, or may so be acquired. And so I think that this bill fits in the part where it says or may be so acquired, although this isn't a land claim agreement. So maybe Mr. Baptiste can explain that a little bit more around, is that this is not a land claim, so is this how we get the and so may be acquired? That's how I read Section 35 of the Constitution, and I think that's what we're trying to flesh out here, is what does Section 35 mean? What is the relationship with Canada and the Métis peoples of Canada? What does that relationship look like? And that's what this bill is trying to do. Now we want to make sure that as we heard at the last meeting, that this Section 8, there's 2 sections, so we heard Section 8 is kind of the crux of the whole matter, kind of crux of the whole bill, is that the government of Canada is recognizing a Métis government, or in this case 3 Métis governments, because that's what's laid out in Section 1 of this. And so we got to get that right. Is that the right terminology? Does that fit within the Section 35? How are we going to go forward on this? So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Viersen. Next is Ms. Adlut.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to apologize for coming in late. I ended up in the wrong room. And I wanted to apologize for missing what I missed at the rest of the table. to also respond to Jaime's concerns. I think that, and welcome as well. It's wonderful to see everyone here because you're a very strong reminder that we are doing this to make sure that we're respecting Indigenous people's rights. The last 3 meetings, I think, have been quite pivotal. They've been very important because Clause 8 is not just any other clause. It's a very important clause, and I think that's why we're working so hard to make sure that we get it right. I know that from my perspective, it's not about making it perfect, but that we're doing the right thing. When we first started this study on making sure that we do our part as parliamentarians to recognize the Métis right to self-government, it was always uncomfortable for me because that should not be a parliamentarian's job to do. It's a very colonial process, and it's something, unfortunately, we're forced to have to do because of our job. So when we're discussing Clause 8, we need to make sure that we're respecting as many Indigenous people's rights as possible. And since the study began, we've heard such a wide diversity of input from First Nations, from Métis, and it's been concerning how this bill came about, how voices were ignored, and I have needed to always remind myself every time I come into these studies, to this study in particular, that we're doing this to make sure that we can do our part to ensure that the Métis get their right to self-government recognized. That's how important this clause is. Unfortunately, we've come to a standstill because we're hearing from, I know I've had to do some consultations myself, and I'm not satisfied yet with the amount of feedback that I'm getting, and I really need more time to finish my consultations. I'm not ready to move beyond Clause 8, and I really hope sincerely that I could have the support of the committee for my motion to adjourn so that I can do some more consultations with the important voices that will be impacted by Clause 8.
Just to clarify, Lori or Ms. Lute, are you making that as a motion?
Yes.
Motion to
I am
adjourn?
making a motion to adjourn.
Okay. The motion's been made, so we need to vote on it now.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't take a minute to,
There won't be a debate on it. No, it's non-debatable. We have to go to a vote.
can't have a quick.
Once it's called, it's,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll get the clerk to call.
Mr. Batiste,
Voting against. Let's get this done.
Mr. Carr,
Against.
Ms. Gainey, Mr. McLeod,
Against.
Ms. Atwin,
Against.
Mr. Schmale,
In favor.
Mr. Vidal,
In favor.
Mr. Viersen,
In favor.
Mr. Zimmer,
In support of my colleague Lori Lett's request, in favor.
Mr. Perron,
Pour.
Ms. Idlout.
In favor.
Okay, folks.
6 yeas.
And
Just
5.
before I hit the gavel, just to let everybody know, we have requested resources for tomorrow. We haven't received response yet at this point. The request is in from 3:30 to 5:30. We will plan on having our regular meeting on Thursday, 3:30 to 5:30. And at this point, we have a request in for Friday, but we haven't heard back. So that's where we're at for planning purposes. And with that, folks, we're adjourned.